Working at the car wash, whoa, 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 whoa. Working at the car wash, yeah. Come on now and sing it with me, car wash. Working at the car wash, yeah. Baby, 'cause I'm going down. I'm going down. 'Cause you ain't around. Baby, my whole world's upside down. 'Cause I wanna get next to you. Hello, Home Slices, and welcome back to Sup Media Reviews. Season 2 is here, and we're kicking things up a notch. We're diving into music, TV, and movies from over 20 years ago, plus we're kicking off a brand new YouTube series that's going to bring even more fun your way. This season is full of fresh reviews, special guests, and plenty of laughs. Ready to jump in? Let's get into this week's episode. What is up, Home Slices, and welcome back to the Sup Media Reviews podcast. I am your host, Kiara, and I'm really excited to kick off something very special today. First up, I want to say a super special thanks to all of my YouTube subscribers. We reached 100 subscribers just a little while ago, and I'm really happy about that. Thank you all so much for subscribing and being really supportive. I appreciate it so much. And if you're watching now and you are not subscribed, go ahead and hit that button so you can say that you got in on the ground floor over here at the Sup Media Reviews platform. Now, let's get into a little bit of housekeeping. I want to make sure everyone is up to speed on what's happening over here at Sup Media Reviews, because I haven't talked about this nearly enough, and it is time. This month, April, is the final month of season 2 of the Sup Media Reviews podcast. And to close out this season in style, we're doing something that I've never done before. Every episode that we are dropping in April is going to be a review of a comedy movie, and every single one of those films has a milestone anniversary this year. I'm calling it our April Fool series, and today we're kicking things off with our oldest entry, but more on that a little bit later. Now, for those of you who may only be following the podcast and missed my most recent top 5 sports movie video on YouTube, go ahead and check that out. I also want to let you know that after season 2 wraps, we're going to be on a break to prep for season 3, which is coming back during the spooky season, which is in October of this year. But don't worry, I won't be going completely dark during the off season, okay? I have some new content ideas that I've been developing and that I'll be testing out while we're on hiatus, so you will have things to watch. And of course, we have almost 80 episodes in the back catalog right now on the podcast, either here on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you prefer, and those can definitely keep you busy while we recharge. Okay, now you all are fully caught up. Let's get into today's review. Now, in our first April Fool's pick, we have the movie Car Wash from 1976, which means that this year it is celebrating its 50th anniversary. Now, if you aren't familiar, Car Wash is an ensemble comedy directed by Michael Schultz, written by Joel Schumacher, and it follows a single day in the lives of the employees of a Los Angeles car wash. And when I say ensemble, I really mean it. Okay, so the film features Franklin, AJ, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that last name right, Antonio Fargas, Bill Duke, Ivan Dixon, Garrett Morris, the Pointer Sisters, George Carlin, and of course, Richard Pryor. This is very much a time capsule showcasing the life of 1970s Los Angeles, and it was one of several Black-focused films produced by a major Hollywood studio during that era. Now, before we get into my review, let's talk about a few fun facts, because this movie has some fascinating behind-the-scenes stuff. Fun fact number 1. The Richard Pryor situation. Now, Richard Pryor is in this movie, and he plays Daddy Rich, who is the head of the Church of Divine Economic Spirituality. Now, essentially, he is a flashy televangelist who is rolling up to the car wash in a flashy limo with lots of women, okay? Now, if you've seen any promotional materials for this film, you probably saw that Richard Pryor's name and face were pretty much front and center. And I think that makes sense. He was one of the biggest names in comedy in that time. But here's the thing, despite being heavily featured in the marketing, his role in the actual film is basically a cameo. Pryor himself acknowledged this in his autobiography, Prior Convictions and Other Life Sentences. In it, he admitted that he felt that the public was misled about how large his part in this movie actually was. He also admitted to being high on cocaine during the 2 days that he filmed his scenes. So his words were, on the set of Car Wash, he was, quote, too cooked out to know any better. So there, there's that. Now, this situation isn't necessarily unusual in Hollywood. If we think about how in Scream 2, they marketed Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett front and center, and they get killed in the opening scene of the movie, as well as Drew Barrymore in the first Scream movie. Studios have a long history of leading with the biggest name, even when that person only appears in the film a little bit. And in this case, they absolutely leaned on Richard Pryor's popularity for this film. And knowing all this stuff before watching it made his scene in particular pretty interesting. Now, fun fact number 2, let's talk about this title song, y'all. So you already know the song Car Wash, whoa, 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 whoa. Car Wash has been a staple. Started off, as a disco hit in 1976 and was the title song for this movie, which is how it, helped it rise in popularity. And while you might know the song, you probably don't know the story behind it. So Car Wash is a single that was performed by the group Rolls Royce, and it was actually the group's very first single. It was a #1 chart-topping hit and one of the biggest selling singles of the entire 1970s disco era. The song was written and arranged by Norman Whitfield, and at the 1977 Grammy Awards, Whitfield took home the Grammy for Best Album of Original Score written for a motion picture or television special for the Car Wash soundtrack. Now, the song itself had a long and lasting life, and it still slaps to this day. And not for nothing, it's a track that's 50 freaking years old, so it has a long legacy. Now, if you want to watch along or check this out yourself, it's not currently available for free on streaming, but I ended up renting it on Amazon Prime Video, which is actually my favorite place to rent movies because of the IMDb X-ray feature that gives you like the cast info and scene details in real time. So if you want to check it out, I would suggest going there. Now, let's talk about personal connection and cultural significance. Full transparency, prior to watching the movie for this review, I'd never seen it before. It wasn't really on my radar growing up. I'm not sure why, but here's why I wanted to include it in this April Fool's series. It's turning 50 years old this year, and I feel like that was a significant enough reason to push myself outside of my comfort zone. I love watching older movies, but not like 1970s old for some reason. So this movie is helping me to push myself out of my comfort zone and be a little bit more adventurous with the movies that I'm watching, and I'm happy to do it. And given that this film kind of looms largely in film history, particularly Black film history, and has a lot of people whose names that I recognize, I figured why not, okay? I feel like this movie served as a blueprint for many other primarily Black cast comedies and, comedies in general that came after it. And I think the title song is genuinely one of the prized gems of the disco era that still slaps today. So I think this is a film that, as a person who enjoys movies, I should definitely watch. And speaking of cultural significance, another movie might come to mind when you think about Car Wash. There was a 2001 film called The Wash, starring Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg as two roommates who end up working at a car wash. That movie was very much inspired by the legacy of this film. And while I have never watched that film, I am excited to watch the OG, okay? So I'm going in with curiosity and an open mind, and I'm honestly hoping to be pleasantly surprised. All right, it's time to get into our review, okay? So Car Wash opens with a sweeping aerial view of Los Angeles, and we're looking over the city, and then we come down to earth and land at the Deluxe Car Wash. Before we even meet a single character, we see their sign. The sign proudly announces that they give, and I'm quoting this directly, the best hand job in town, okay? That is literally on the sign, and that's their pitch. And while it is a little raunchy, it actually isn't wrong, because the whole kind of value proposition for this business is that they do things by hand. There is very limited automated elements to their car wash. So they have real people who are scrubbing, drying, rinsing off, vacuuming, all of that's waxing, all that stuff is done by hand by employees. And that is a key differentiator for this particular car wash. The opening credits roll, and we see a lot of names go across the screen, some that we recognize and some that I have never seen before. And from the very first frame, we hear the radio, and I love the way the radio plays a major role in this film. The radio is essentially another character and narrator to help carry the story, and I'm going to dig into that a little bit more later. So by this time, it's about 8 a.m. in the morning. The shop is just opening for business, and as workers start rolling in, we begin to meet our ensemble cast. We first meet Lindy, who is played by Antonio Fargas. Lindy is a gay man who presents in traditionally feminine clothing. They don't wear any undershirt under their uniform. They have a scarf. Their hair is dyed and curled. They're wearing full makeup. Lindy is sassy and confident and fully capable of holding their own, okay? We also meet Lonnie, who is played by Dixon, who is an older, level-headed man with this kind of fatherly quality. He's steady and measured, and we quickly sense that he has like a history and a lot of quiet dignity. Lonnie is so handsome in this movie. It's very interesting because 1970s handsome is not the same as 2026 handsome. And I can't describe it, but some handsomeness lasts the test of time. And there is something about Lonnie that is just very beautiful to me. Okay, y'all. We also meet a character named TC, who is played by Franklin AJ. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but he's a young man with a magnificent afro. His afro was amazing, okay? He has sideburns, for days. He's dressed to the nines because he is trying to impress a young lady named Mona. She is a waitress at a local diner where the guys go to grab lunch sometimes. And TC also has a dream of writing a comic book about the first black superhero, a character that he calls the Fly or like Superfly or something along those lines. This is his own version of, a black Superman-esque character. We also meet Floyd and Lloyd, who are two guys who are trying to launch some type of entertainment act called the Futuristics. They appear to be some type of singing and comedy duo with a very 70s energy, and they have an audition after their shift today. So that's fun. We also meet Earl, who is played by Leonard Jackson. You all might remember Leonard from The Color Purple. He was Celie's stepdaddy / baby daddy. And he plays that role so well in The Color Purple that I couldn't stand to see his face in this movie. I just couldn't stand looking at him, couldn't stand hearing his voice. Interestingly enough, he does play a character that we kind of aren't seeing it for. He's a stern man who takes himself really seriously and thinks that he's above the rest of the crew because his job, which is waxing the cars, means that he never gets wet. So he has created this hierarchy in his mind. And not only does he think he's better than them, he kind of orders them around, even though he doesn't really have any formal authority. I liken him to a Dwight Schrute a little bit, but kind of meaner. Yeah, they don't respect him. They don't respect him at all. And we see a little bit of that later. Now, we also meet Marsha, who is the cashier. She is a young, fun, kind of unpretentious woman who people genuinely like and find quite attractive. She has a number of suitors in this film. So outside of the car wash, we have George Carlin, who appears periodically throughout the film as a cab driver who's searching for a passenger who skipped out on her fare. Now, the woman who skipped out on their fare is a lady of the night whose name is Marlene. She was wearing a blonde wig when she bailed on the cab, and so she promptly takes over the women's restroom as the car wash to transform herself, okay? And so it's her personal changing room for what appears to be a long period of time in the movie. She's literally in there for a minute. And so George kind of pops in and out throughout the movie to ask if anyone has seen a tall black woman with a blonde wig, but no one has because, she already did the Superman phone booth quick change into little orphan Annie. She got a little red curly wig with bangs now, so she basically gets away with skipping out on the cab fare. We also meet Leon, who is the white owner of the car wash, and his son Erwin, who is showing up to work with his dad today. Erwin is a college kid taking business classes, but he's learning a lot about the world and wants to be a part of the working class, so that's fun. Okay. And on the radio, the DJ announces a radio contest where he's going to play a soundbite that goes disco dance. And the first person to call in and name the song that the radio station is playing is going to win a pair of tickets to a disco dance party that's happening at a local dance hall / rib shack later that day. He has 3 pairs of tickets to give out, so there are 3 chances for that. And TC is particularly interested in getting those radio tickets. And then, the car wash opens, the cars start rolling in, the car wash theme kicks on, and we watch the guys, they're washing cars to this song, Car Wash, whoa, whoa, whoa. We see them dancing with, the little steam wands and dancing as they're wiping down the cars. And to me, this feels like a music video. I actually got a lot of joy out of watching the car wash business happening and picking up for the day with these guys along the assembly line, and how the music is playing a role in the film, because the music is being played over like the loudspeakers so that the folks who are outside can also hear the radio, and so it's helping them get through their day. And I really love that, and I actually got a lot of joy out of watching them dance while they're working. I don't know why. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the opening part of this movie, okay? The radio is essentially a narrator, and I think that this is one of the most interesting creative choices in the film. The radio is playing for almost the entirety of this movie, and it's doing a lot of work. It's playing the soundtrack for the most part to this movie, and again, we saw that it won a Grammy, so it's a good one. But also the radio is delivering the news. We hear about politics and sports. We hear a little bit about gay culture and the conversations happening around that. We also hear about a serial bomber in the area who the authorities are calling the Mad Bomber, who has been using glass soda bottles as explosive devices. That also comes back. And all of this is doing something really specific. It's giving us this kind of time capsule thing. It's orienting us in 1976 in a way that feels lived in and real, which I don't think was intentional, because the movie took place in modern day back in 1976, but now it feels very interesting to me, and I think it works well. And I think it hits so differently because if you go into a similar car wash today, or think about going into a mechanic shop, you're going to see TVs, you're going to see screens, right? And so we consistently consume media all the time. We have our phones, we have social media, through apps and all of that stuff. But in 1976, the radio was really how you stayed connected to the world while you were doing anything else, whether that was working or, chores at home or whatever. It was the background hum of daily life. And I can even remember going to visit my mom at work, and she would have like a boombox on a low volume, decent volume, playing, was it Magic 102? We grew up in Houston. That's like a oldies and R&B radio station in Houston, and it would just literally perpetually be on. And that way we could get, the background noise. We could hear some great music as well, but then we can also hear things about the news. And it was just very interesting to hear people literally play the radio all freaking day, just to kind of have that noise in the background to stay in touch with the news. It really kind of put me back in that time. I really enjoyed this element of the story, and I think that it's not just atmosphere, it really is the connective tissue of the whole film. It also reminded me of something interesting about the soundtrack. Now, Car Wash, the song, is the theme song for this movie, the title song for this movie, and it is played in different forms in different parts of the movie. I thought that I might get annoyed by it because that Danger Zone song from Top Gun pissed me off. I was like, we get it. They're going to the danger zone. We get it. I was very annoyed by that, but I was less annoyed by this one. I don't know why. What is up, y'all? I am back, and it is the next day, so my hair is different, my outfit is different, all that is different, okay? Don't fret. I usually don't like to break up my recordings, but I just needed a break, y'all. I needed a break, so we are back, and we're gonna jump right back in, okay? So I talked a little bit about the soundtrack and the title song, but now let's talk about the fact that this movie is a day in the life film, and I'm really into those types of, works of art. I like that Car Wash takes just a single day, literally like a 10-hour span, to cover the lives of all of the different people in this ensemble, right? We have a single car wash, basically a single location, and I'm like a sucker for that type of format. I think about movies like Friday, which is, of course, a Black classic that also takes place in LA, and I cannot help but think about that when watching this film because there are these thematic and structural similarities. We have Friday, which is one day in the lives of Craig and Smokey and, all the people in their neighborhood, and we get to see what happens to them on this particular Friday. Or when I think about Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, Mad City, which to me functions kind of like a day in the life of a young Kendrick Lamar, right, in Compton. So I really like works of art that zoom in on a single day or a single place, and they have a kind of power that, sprawling epics where there's multiple locations, multiple days, multiple time periods. There's something really nice about the simplicity of being in one place for one day and getting to look into the lives of those people or those characters. So I really like that. It has a certain amount of constraint that allows people to really have to use their imagination because they are limited with the places that they can go and the things that they can do. So I really like that. And I feel like Car Wash does that really well. It's a single location film. Everything happens in or around the car wash. And because of that, we get to know the people a little bit. And we don't get to know all of them equally, but we get to know enough about each person to kind of care about what happens to them at the end of the day. So I enjoy that. I also want to say this feels like kind of like a precursor to The Office. It feels like it definitely has the energy of an ensemble workplace comedy. You have people with different personalities and backgrounds thrown together in this shared space. You got the person who takes their job too seriously, which, is why I compared Earl to Dwight Schrute. You got the young idealist, you got the romantic, we got pranksters, the guy who gives terrible advice. We have silly little conflicts with, mouse ears and all of that stuff. And it feels like something that could or would happen in The Office. And just like The Office, underneath the silliness, there are some real human stories. So we have people who have real dreams and disappointments. And I think that Car Wash could be considered an actual precursor to The Office, which came out decades later. So I see Car Wash having an influence on other more modern works of art, which I think is pretty cool. And for them making a workplace ensemble comedy with a predominantly Black cast, have it be funny and on some level emotionally resonant is kind of a big deal. Now, let's talk about Lindy. This is interesting because I feel like Lindy is a little bit of a complicated character. I have mixed feelings about Lindy, and I want to be honest about them, but I do want to name that I am a cishet woman and I consider myself to be an ally of the LGBTQ community, but I'm not a member of the community. So my opinion should be taken with a grain of salt. But I just think that we need to take a little bit of a deeper look at Lindy's character. On one hand, it's 1976, it's 50 years ago. This is a male-dominated workplace comedy, and there is a gay character. And interestingly enough, Lindy is not necessarily just a background character, not just a joke. Like if I think about just a few weeks ago, I reviewed Fat Girls, and there's a gay character in there that's more like a caricature. And it's very interesting because I think Lindy was a more well-rounded character than Ramon was in Fat Girls. And so to see Lindy have some substance, I think was kind of revolutionary for a movie that's 50 years old. They're a character with a name and a personality and a presence throughout the film. And I think that that is very forward thinking in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I do want to acknowledge that they would even have a gay character have a presence in this film. Kind of it's very forward thinking. I will agree. But on the other hand, as soon as I saw that there was a gay character in this old ass movie, I knew there was going to be some problematic stuff. I knew there was going to be some jokes that didn't hold up. And in a lot of ways, there's a lot of homophobia in this movie, not just directed at Lindy, but mostly directed at Lindy. It's frequent, it's jarring. The F slur is used, which I don't think we got to that part in the story yet. But yeah, I cringed a few times when it came to Lindy. But here's what I will say. With all of the bad jokes, the razzing, the homophobia, I think that it's very interesting that Lindy handles it with more grace and more wit than anyone else at the car wash. I feel like Lindy's comebacks are always sharp. Lindy is confident and funny, doesn't need anyone's validation. And I think that that was genuinely refreshing. Like, I think you'd be not hard pressed. That's not true. I think that there are some characters currently who are gay on TV and in movies now that are not as well-rounded as Lindy. So yeah, I don't know. I think it was refreshing to see for this to be a movie that's 50 years old. But then I think there's also some bad parts of how Lindy is depicted. And I think that one of the things that I didn't love about the way Lindy was depicted is that Lindy was touching people without their consent at certain times. There was a moment where one of the guys was changing in the locker room and Lindy got a little handsy. And I was like, okay, that's like not a good stereotype to have about gay men flirting with or touching on, men in an unwanted way that actually can be kind of harmful. So I didn't like that. But then on other times when Lindy was defending themselves and like having comebacks for all of the guys making homophobic jokes, I was like, Lindy kind of ate. So it's just really complicated. And I just want to say that, again, take all of this with a grain of salt. But I think that Lindy's representation is very complicated. On one hand, it's refreshing to have a gay character who's not reduced to just a caricature, that they have personality, that they are very funny, that they can stand up for themselves without resorting to blows or anything along those lines. I like that Lindy can hold their own. And I think that there are problematic elements to the way that Lindy was treated, the homophobia that was directed at Lindy. And because it's 1976, some of those things are just the function of the time. So yeah, on one hand, it's impressive. And on the other hand, it's offensive. So I'm holding space for both of those things. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the movie as the day keeps going on. Okay, so we are still at the car wash. We're getting deeper into these individual storylines that are kind of running parallel throughout the film. So I'm going to walk you through some of the major ones and we'll talk a little bit more about them later. So we have Erwin, who is Leon's college educated son who's taking business classes right now, but he decides that he wants to work the car wash line with the guys. He's reading Mal. He wants to be a part of the working class, and he's kind of rejecting the fact that his father owns a business and that one day he could be the boss. He really wants to be a blue collar worker. Okay. So his dad is like, okay, get on the line and start working with them. So he dresses in a uniform and he does his best 1970s attempt at fitting in with the brothers. And he is doing like 1976 AAVE, wanting to work with the brothers in unity and, doing the Black Power fist, all of that stuff. And it doesn't go well. Okay. He ends up getting soaked at the steam section, and then he accidentally goes through the rollers with the soap in the car wash, and he has to be pulled out. But Erwin at this time is very high. He's been smoking in the bathroom. So he is genuinely thrilled that he's the first human to go through a car wash, and he is unfazed. Erwin is a young man trying to find his way. And part of that is rejecting his birthright as a college educated man who is going to inherit a business. And I'm like, what is it about the men in this film wanting to struggle? Like, why do you want to work on the line when you're clearly not cut out for it and your dad owns the company? Or who is it, Justin? Why does Justin want to not go to college? Like, get yourselves together. Okay. These men are underachieving out here. So anyways, we also get more of Abdullah, who again is played by Bill Duke. Abdullah, whose original name is Dwayne. So a lot of people in this movie have a hard time with calling him by his new chosen name now that he has converted to Islam, is my assumption. But he missed work the day before. He came in late today, and he has a very confrontational energy with pretty much everyone, including Leon, their white boss. When Leon calls him over to address his attendance and tardiness, Abdullah's attitude is basically like, what are you gonna do, fire me? Don't you want me to wash these cars? He also gets into it with Lonnie about who he's been spending time with, because Abdullah gets called away to check in with a guy in a van, and that guy's name is Sonny Fredericks, and Lonnie, who has that fatherly energy, clocks Sonny as bad news. So he's trying to be a type of mentor to Abdullah, but Abdullah's kind of not having it. He, kind of throws back in Lonnie's face about him being an ex-con, and it's just not good. But then there is this strange and beautiful moment that I really don't understand. Like, there's a moment that happens in this film that is so beautiful and like so unrelated to the story. And Abdullah is alone in the locker room, and he is playing the saxophone. And he's not just playing it, he's playing it beautifully. I was like, what is happening? The song is like somber, it's stunning, and it's just like completely out of nowhere, y'all. And the shoe shine guy, he's an older man, walks in the locker room while he's playing, but Abdullah doesn't notice him. And so then I'm like, okay, is his poor attendance because he's moonlighting at the speakeasy? Like, what is he doing? But that's not it. But we literally learn nothing else about his musical proclivities, and they never bring it up again. I think it only served, first off, I don't know if Bill Duke was really playing that freaking saxophone, but I was like, this is beautiful, okay? I think it was supposed to be a representation of what's going on inside of Abdullah as he's figuring himself out. He's a young man, and he, recently changed his religion, recently changed his name. He has big ideas about, the revolution and things that he wants to change about his community. And he's just really, he's getting involved with shady characters. And so he's really just trying to figure out who he is. And I think that that was really the only purpose of that. But I was like, they never bring this up again. This is crazy, but it is beautiful. I would just rewatch that part of the story. It was just so beautiful. It like broke up the silliness of this very silly comedy. Now, on the lighter side, we got a chain reaction of workplace pranks that are very inappropriate. And that's really the reason why I'm bringing them up. So there's what I'm assuming, a Hispanic worker there whose name is Chuco. And there is at least part native man named Goody who has like a signature mouse ear hat, and Chuco asked to borrow it to scare Marsha, the cashier, in the bathroom. He literally, like, there's a window that connects to the women's bathroom, and he scares her while she's sitting on the toilet. And I'm like, okay, sexual harassment, there's that. But because he does it with the mouse ears on, Marsha thinks that it's Goody. And so Marsha pours a bucket of water on Goody's head, which leads to Goody re-wetting a car that Chuco already dried. And then TC almost gets his legendary afro wet, and there's a little thing there. And then Goody finally gets his lick back by putting like these little Tabasco peppers. I don't even know if they sell those anymore, but I remember seeing them when I was younger. Like these green Tabasco brand peppers. I mean, he puts them in Chuco's burrito, and Goody holds Chuco's drink hostage while his mouth is on fire. And so it's this, chain of petty workplace revenge. And I thought it was interesting. A very, reminds me of the Office pranks kind of. And it was like a funny storyline, except for the part where Chuco sexually harassed Marsha while she was in the freaking bathroom. Like, what is wrong with these people? So next up, we get the DJ radio contest coming back for the second time. The first time, TC made it to the phone booth to make the call, but didn't have any money to put into, he didn't have a dime. He couldn't drop a dime. Y'all remember when people used to say drop dimes? They were literally talking about phone booths. And I don't think anybody says that anymore. So that's cool. But TC sprints to the phone booth this time around, but Marlene is in there. Marlene is the lady of the night. She's trying to call the man named Joe, who she's in love with, but it's the wrong number, okay? And TC misses his opportunity. This is his second opportunity. There's only going to be one more time for him to try to win those tickets. So then Daddy Rich pulls up, y'all. So he pulls up in a fancy, like, gold limousine, and Daddy Rich is played by Richard Pryor. He is kind of like a mega church prosperity gospel pastor who has 4 very well-dressed women with him, and at least 2 of them turn out to be the actual Pointer Sisters, who are playing characters called the Wilson Sisters. Now, if y'all don't know, the Pointer Sisters are a legendary, like, R&B/disco group that have been making music for ages, okay? And, they have songs, I'm so excited, and I just can't hide it. Or they're I'm just burning, doing the neutron dance. They got a bunch of hits, okay? But it's really interesting to see them in this film. I actually really enjoyed that. So the only reason they're at the car wash is that like a pigeon pooped on the trunk of the limo. And so we see Daddy Rich. He is dressed like a pimp. He has women that are following him and with him in the limo like a pimp. And he's eccentric and demanding. And when the shoe shine guy asks to shine his shoes, Daddy Rich has his own shoe shine. He has qualifications about how hot the water can be that touches the limo. He is basically a celebrity. Like everyone in the car wash is surrounding him like fans, and they are on his dick. Okay, they are dick riding. Okay, they're like, how did you amass your wealth? And he's saying these platitudes about how to get money, and for a fee I can get you into heaven, and all of the nasty stuff. And it's like, ew. Like there's a lot of stuff going around now about how these mega pastors, or pastors in general, are quite greedy and have been using the church to enrich themselves. And this is a exaggerated parody of them. And for whatever reason, Daddy Rich is more open and honest about the prosperity gospel. So yeah, he is quite forward with it, okay? But he is an immoral preacher who is pretty blatant about his focus on attaining wealth. He even curses, which I think is very interesting. Yeah, everyone's all over him, asking him about his ministry or whatever, and one of them literally kisses his ring, which is like low key disgusting. And it's like all it takes is a little money for these men to become groupies. Ain't nothing changed. So anyway, everyone except Abdullah is, riding Daddy Rich's D. And Abdullah actually confronts Daddy Rich directly and basically calls him a charlatan who is selling spirituality. And Daddy Rich leans into this confrontation. He defends himself, and the crowd is, kind of filling him with his stupid platitudes until Abdullah calls him a pimp. He dresses like a pimp. He has ladies with him like a pimp. He's rolling like a pimp. I think Abdullah was onto something, okay? Do I think it was the right time? Maybe not. But but there's never a good time to call somebody a pimp, okay? So at this point, Daddy Rich instructs the Pointer Sisters to make Abdullah apologize. And they do this by singing a song at him. And it was so weird. It was so weird. It was like this kind of gospel adjacent number about believing in something, or about like letting them believe what they want to believe in and letting him believe in what he believes in. I don't know. It was a weird song, a very strange song, a collection plate. Oh, wait. People physically keep Abdullah there because he tries to walk away multiple times as the Pointer Sisters are singing at him, and they're like, nah, come and get this. And I'm like, this is so weird. This is like they're holding him hostage to listen to this weird song. It's so strange. Yeah, it's one of the things that I feel like I don't know that I have seen anything like this. This is so weird. But a collection plate ends up getting passed around, and the money that Daddy Rich literally just gave the shoeshine guy goes right back into the collection plate. Even Marlene, the lady of the night, contributes, hoping that Daddy Rich can help her find Joe. Now, eventually, Daddy Rich and the sisters leave, but not before Daddy Rich tells Abdullah that he has it in him too, which felt like it meant something, but the movie didn't really explain it. I think he might be saying something along the lines of like, they're cut from the same cloth. I'm not 100% sure, but that was the extent of Richard Pryor's part. And he was all over the promotional materials, and he literally was in the movie for maybe 5-10 minutes. Yeah. But meanwhile, there is a customer who leaves a Doberman in his car, which gets loose and poops on the asphalt. Now, Earl, being Earl, demands that someone else pick it up using a bakery box, and this comes up later. But I do want to point out that Earl is not anyone's boss. He just bosses everyone else around. We also see a tiny, wiry man who is played by Professor Irwin Corey, who's a real comedian. I don't know that I ever heard of him before, but he comes in and takes a glass soda bottle into the bathroom and emerges with tinfoil on it. Now, Hippo, who is fresh from getting a sexual favor from the lady of the night, immediately concludes that he is the mad bomber that they have been hearing about on the radio. Now, Hippo tells TC his suspicions, and so TC activates his superhero persona with buzzing sounds and all, and steals what he thinks is the bomb, and a foot chase ensues, and when the bottle goes flying, everyone braces for impact, but it turns out to be a container of urine that the man has been collecting for a post-surgery doctor's visit. Apparently, it took him 2 days to produce, and Leon, the owner, has to come out and like comp the service and give the man a little bit of money to make up for it, okay? So that there is no bad blood. That's what I call customer service, y'all. But yeah, they teased TC about stealing a bottle of pee. It was suspicious, y'all. It was very suspicious. But then there's Justin. So I mentioned Justin earlier, and y'all had no context for this. Justin is one of the workers. He has a girlfriend that comes by to visit him during working hours, and she basically gives him an ultimatum where she says, go to school or they are done. He doesn't want to go, and so she basically drops him and breaks up with him just then. We have a little bit of a behind the scenes note on that particular storyline that I'm going to get to in a little bit. It's interesting. Leon, meanwhile, the owner, is tired of hearing the type of songs being played on the radio. It's essentially black music from, the soundtrack, right? So Marsha, the cashier, points out that he is the owner and he can change it to something. So he switches it to classical music, and the men immediately begin drawing the cars in slow motion. They're like, I don't know why, but that type of shenanigan is up my alley. I thought that was very funny. But if you think about the radio and the way I've talked about how it plays a role in this movie, it really does help you to not only pass the day along, but if the music is upbeat, it helps you to work faster. And that, is the same theory of like, you shouldn't really listen to like slower music when you're working out, because the music with more BPMs gets you in the mood to keep moving and to move faster and to, keep your heart rate up. So I totally understand where the guys are coming from and why Leon really can't, put on classical music or anything like that. Yeah, so Leon ends up switching it back to I'm Going Down, which is another Rolls Royce song that came from this movie. I had no idea that that song came from this movie. Like, it's a big hit that people love, and then Mary J. Blige did her own version of it, and we love that song today. So knowing that it originated on the soundtrack of this movie is freaking crazy, y'all. Now, Slide, who is the shop bookie played by Garrett Morris, gets arrested in front of everyone for 37 unpaid parking violations. From the back of the cop car, Slide makes it clear that everyone still owes him their gambling debts. In Calvin, there's been this little badass kid that's been terrorizing everybody on a skateboard, fakes getting hit by a car and spooks everyone, and ends up getting picked up by his mama, who smacks him across the head. I was tired of seeing that bad kid, but it reminds me of the bad kids that were also in Friday. Now, I'm telling you, there are influences from this movie everywhere, okay? So we done with that little boy, thank goodness, okay? We also see that today is payday, y'all. And when Abdullah opens his little envelope with his check in it, I think he finds a pink slip. We don't see it, but he is pissed off and he confronts Leon in front of everybody for firing him, okay? He is physically imposing. Bill Duke is a very large guy. He actually needs to be held back. He threatens Leon. And it's very interesting because on one hand, he's like, I'm going to get you, you're going to pay for this. And then on the other hand, he's like, do you think I need this little job? And it's like, which one is it, bucko? Like, do you not care about this job or do you need it? Which one is it? And he's just so filled with bravado and ego that he really is not thinking straight. Lonnie is trying to calm everything down. And so Leon is shaken by the interaction because, again, Bill Duke is a big guy. Leon is not necessarily confrontational. At one point, he offered to speak to Abdullah in private, and, talked about the reasons why he was letting him go. And, yeah, he's pretty shaken by the interaction. So after Abdullah is removed and goes to, the locker room to gather his things, Lonnie goes straight into Leon's office to ask him to give Abdullah another chance and basically say he's going through something, like, give him another chance. And Leon's kind of not trying to hear it. So while he's in there, Lonnie tries to bring up the ideas that he has for growing the business and a raise that he's been discussing for months. Leon is like, I can't support my family on what you're paying me. And with a lot this size, you could be making twice as much money. And so we also learn that Leon ain't trying to hear it that much because he's actually under a lot of pressure, not just from the physical threat that happened, just moments ago, but the automated car wash nearby, I can't remember the name of it, is also putting pressure on his business. So yeah, he's under some pressure. So he's stressed, he's scared, and Lonnie walks out of that office without being heard. And you could actually see kind of the light go out of Lonnie's eyes a little bit. And by the time he leaves Leon's office to go check on Abdullah, Abdullah has already gone. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in this movie. Y'all, that saxophone scene was so, so interesting. It stopped me in my tracks. Abdullah being alone in the locker room and playing the saxophone was just really beautiful and somber, and we don't talk about it again, but I just really, really enjoyed it. So I think it's a really interesting choice in the film. And while it doesn't explain Abdullah, it gives us another view into who he is. And it just reminds us that there's a lot more going on inside of him than the anger that we see at the surface. We also have Daddy Rich, of course, played by Richard Pryor. But yes, Daddy Rich is a specific parody of prosperity gospel pastors who are more focused on what they can extract from the congregation than on actual spiritual leadership. One of the things Abdullah says is like, hey, you're not doing anything for this neighborhood. Like, what are you actually doing? He isn't doing any community service or anything. So Abdullah confronts him on that. But if we take a look at him, he's cursing, he's preoccupied with money, and people are still hanging on to his every word. Men are still riding it. Like, it's crazy, y'all. It's crazy what you can get people to believe. Now, I appreciate that the movie handles him in a very interesting way. Like, the Pointer Sisters thing is still very weird to me and doesn't make a lot of sense, but I guess whatever. And then Daddy Rich is like parting words to Abdullah about him having it in him too. And I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. It's just so so weird and so random, but I did enjoy the character and like the parody aspect of Daddy Rich. Now let's talk about TC and Mona. Okay, so I didn't bring this up too much, but TC with the afro is stalking Mona at her workplace, and we find out that she went on a date with him once, and she decided that they weren't compatible because he has no money, no future, and no class. And her words are, she's not dealing with no N words that don't have money or a future or class. She is cold to him. She is very clear that she doesn't want to be with him or go out on a date with him, and he will not leave her alone. He keeps showing up. He keeps pushing, and I don't like it. So we're going to talk about more on that later. Now let's talk about Justin and Loretta. It's a very brief storyline, but the stuff in the background is quite interesting. Now, if you remember, Justin and Loretta had a disagreement earlier because Justin didn't want to go to college, but it was basically a requirement for Loretta. Now, I sided with Loretta in the breakup. It's 1976, and education is your future in 1976 if you are a black man. So it's like if the man that you're with isn't building towards something, I think you have every right to protect your own future and walk away. So I was on board with Loretta breaking up with him because he didn't want to go to school. Like, get yourself together. Okay. But a behind the scenes note that is so weird and so, yeah, just weird. I'm just going to call it weird for now. So the actor who played Justin was allegedly only 13 years old during the filming, but he was playing and looking like a grown man. Y'all, Justin did not look 13. It literally, like, if you look up the actor, it gives his date of birth, and the year that he was born was like 13 years before this movie came out. I'm hoping there's like a mix up with the birth certificate or something like that, because no way was he 13. He was an old looking 13, but that's not the biggest problem, because this movie, I don't even know if he could get into theaters to watch this. I don't think PG-13 existed at the time, but it probably should. I don't think he could even get into the movie theaters to watch this movie that he was in. But the problem for me is that the actress who played his girlfriend, Loretta, that he kissed multiple times in this film was like 18 or 19 at the time. And they have this, romantic storyline. And I'm like, I genuinely hope this man was not 13 years old, because not only because he looks significantly older than that, but if it is true, it is deeply inappropriate to have him be in romantic scenes with a woman who is of age, 18 or 19 years old. Okay. I don't like that. Okay. And speaking of inappropriate contact, there is a scene where the employee named Hippo is interested in Marlene, the lady of the night. I referenced this a little bit earlier, but he asked her to go to a secluded place with him where he aggressively gropes her boob to solicit her services. I visibly and physically cringed. I was like, oh my God, can you stop with the mammogram? Like, what are you doing? Y'all, just, and she's so unaffected by it. And they go into the locker room. We don't see or hear any of the things they do, thank God. But when he comes out, he looks scared and happy at the same time. I almost threw up, y'all, when he grabbed her. That don't hold up. I didn't like that. Let's talk about Abdullah's firing. Okay, so let's be clear about something. Leon was definitely within his right to fire Abdullah. Okay, the man missed work the day before. He came in late on the day in question. He was mean to customers, mean to coworkers, mean to his boss, mean to the boss's son. He had a terrible attitude across the board, and he just was not a good employee. So the pink slip, wasn't a surprise, and it was not unjust. However, watching Lonnie walk out of Leon's office being unheard again after months of trying to share ideas and to fight for his place as a leader on the team, especially right after Abdullah's firing, made everything more tense. And so we have this, fun, silly kind of day in the life comedy that has this heaviness that's added to it after the confrontation with Abdullah and after Lonnie, basically gets rejected, right? And so we have Lonnie, who is a competent, dignified man who's trying to turn his life around, and his children came to visit him at one point in this story. And, he has great ideas, and not being able to get 5 minutes with his boss is kind of a slap in the face. And so the other thing that I want to flag with Abdullah's firing is that his threat to Leon kind of reframes everything that we've been watching build with him all day. We see the suspicious man in the van that he met with, the anger that has been simmering in him with all of the confrontations that he's had that day, the saxophone that nobody knew about and that we don't know where it came from. It starts, pointing things in a direction that made me a little uneasy, and that unease carries forward into the final act. Now, the other thing I want to note is that this is a diverse cast, and I think that really matters in 1976. While it is predominantly Black, it's not a Black only cast. We have, a white owner and white employees. We have at least one Hispanic worker. We have a man of mixed race who's primarily Native American or Native American presenting. And apparently that guy, his name is Henry. I don't know, y'all. I don't know the man's name. But apparently he was a notable stuntman who helped co-found the Black Stuntmen's Association, which is kind of cool. So that's nice. But for a long time, I felt like it was kind of hard to find Native American actors and actresses in films. So it was nice to see him be a regular person, because oftentimes they would have a Native American person and they would be a caricature, similar to how other people from different identities would show up and be caricatures. So to see him just get to be a person, that's also kind of revolutionary in its own way. So I like that this movie was intentionally diverse, and I think that requires some acknowledgement. Now let's move on to, basically closing out this film. Okay. The day is winding down and we start closing out all of the open threads one by one. So it's about 6 p.m., which is quitting time. We see Charlene, who is a white employee named Scruggs. Now, this wasn't clear throughout the whole movie, but Scruggs is the gas station attendant. This car wash also has a gas station attached to it. So anyway, Scruggs has a girlfriend that he cheated on named Charlene, and he's been ignoring her all day based on the advice of another employee named Geronimo. Geronimo had been giving Scruggs terrible relationship advice. She don't need to know where you've been at. She don't need to be taking you for granted. And when you get home, she's going to have a cigar ready for you. However, Charlene pulls up to the car wash and drops off a suitcase full of Scruggs's clothes and basically dumps him, which rightfully so. Okay. The relationship is over. Geronimo's advice didn't help, and she saved herself a trip to the clinic, so that's fun. The radio DJ plays the disco dance clip one more time, which means, TC has a really short window to get in that phone booth to make the call and identify the song to win those dance party tickets. He makes it to the phone booth, he gets on the phone, he wins the tickets, and everyone celebrates. We got Floyd and Lloyd, the two guys who are starting some type of entertainment act. They are dressed for their audition and they are heading out. We got Marsha, the cashier. She's doing her makeup for a date that she has with a very, 1970s handsome man named Kenny that came in earlier. And she's making like silly faces in the mirror as she's getting ready. She's really excited about this date, and I think she should be. Hippo. What's up with the fat phobia? Okay, Hippo had a boombox that he was carrying around for most of the movie, but he doesn't have it anymore. And we assume that it was payment for his rendezvous with Marlene, the working girl. Okay. Earl, the Dwight Schrute, goes to his car and finds the bakery box full of dog poop on his trunk. Again, they don't respect him, and it's well deserved. Okay. Leon is packing up to leave, and he ends up finding Lonnie in the locker room, and he says, I promise you that we are going to talk about your ideas tomorrow. We'll definitely sit down and actually have a conversation. It's very interesting that even though Leon is not the best, like Leon is a little cheap. He is homophobic. He was worried that his son was going to come out to him, like worried in a bad way. He is cheating on his wife with the cashier. Like, he's not the best person. And we can maybe even say that he's probably exploiting his employees. However, this moment where he has with Lonnie, where he's like, you know what, we're going to sit down and actually have that conversation. You could tell he got a little bit of heart. So he wasn't all bad. I appreciated that. So we see Lonnie kind of light up, knowing that he's going to have an opportunity to actually share some of the things that he's been thinking about. And that'll maybe help lead him to a higher position at the place. He's already a trusted employee. Okay. It's a small moment. They shake hands on it. And it was nice to see Lonnie be hopeful. Now, in an interesting part, Erwin, who is Lonnie's son, he says goodbye to the guys before heading out with his dad. And for some reason, I felt sad when Erwin was saying goodbye. I don't think that that maybe was their intention, but it was actually kind of sad to see Erwin go. And I'm trying to figure out what the film meant by that. It's clear that he doesn't visit there very often. It's clear that he has these, revolutionary ideas about the working class. But something about it felt like this somber goodbye, like this was really going to be his last time to actually cosplay as a member of the working class, or him recognizing that he wasn't cut out for this work. I'm not 100% sure. It was very, very strange. It was tender. And there was like this genuine moment between Erwin and one of the other guys, wishing him luck and everything. But I was like, this is weird. But I guess it was fun to pretend for a moment. Now, Marcia, before Leon leaves, kisses him, and nobody's supposed to know that they're smooching on the side, and she's lying to his face about why she won't be home at night. And it's very interesting if we compare Marcia to Marlene. Now, Marlene is the working girl, the lady of the night, who has an affinity for Joe, who is a character that we don't get to see because their scenes got edited out. But it's just very interesting. We see Marcia and how there's very little judgment of her for not only smashing her boss who is married, and, at the same time that she is about to go on a date with a different man. And then we have Marlene, who, is a working girl who's pining after one guy and then is solicited for a sexual interaction by the hippo, which, I mean, give the man a real name. And we kind of see there's a contrast between them. I don't know if it was on purpose or not. And I think that the fact that Joe was edited out of the movie plays into it, but it's just very interesting how we don't get like a bow tied around any of the women's stories, and Marlene's story is just almost a nothing burger essentially, whereas we have Marlene, who of course is judged because of her sex work, and then we have Marcia, who is promiscuous without the judgment. I think it's just interesting to kind of compare those two ladies. But arguably, I think Marcia being with her married boss should be a bigger deal. So because Marcia is so excited about her date with this new guy, Lonnie volunteers to close out the cash register so she can go ahead and leave early. So he's alone in the office with the safe open, counting all the cash for the day, and he hears a noise. And so we see Abdullah's big 6'4" behind skulking in the background. He comes into the store. I don't know why Lonnie didn't lock the freaking door, but he comes in with a gun talking about he wants the money from the safe. Now Lonnie, who is an ex-con, is like, nah, you're gonna have to use that gun. And I'm like, Lonnie, don't encourage this man. He has a bad temper. He been getting in arguments all day. He lost his job. You do not want to push this man. Yeah, don't encourage him, okay? Abdullah calls Lonnie a house Negro and says, you've been protecting Leon, the white boss, and his money. And Lonnie says, this ain't about protecting Leon. This is about protecting you from yourself, basically. And he's like, there are jails full of young men like you. And yeah, give me the gun. And Abdullah cocks the gun, and I'm like, oh my God, y'all, I am filled with so much dread. This silly movie has waited to literally like the last 5 minutes to raise the stakes, and my heart is palpitating. And I'm like, Lonnie is for sure gonna die. Look, he just got the opportunity the next day. He's gonna have the opportunity to tell his boss about the ideas that he's been having, and he's not gonna get to do it because he about to get shot by this man. And that's where my head was at this moment. Okay, Lonnie keeps talking, and he finally talks Abdullah down. Abdullah puts the gun down and just melts into Lonnie's arms, and I'm like, why are y'all doing this to me? And I'm still on edge because he cocked the gun. So I'm like, one of them is going to get shot on accident. Or Lonnie had a visit from a parole officer that's been harassing him. And I'm like, oh, that man about to pull up and see Lonnie with the gun and he going to go back to jail. I was so filled with dread, y'all. And seeing big old Abdullah, who again is 6'4", falling into Lonnie's arms and literally crying. And Abdullah keeps saying over and over, it's all falling apart, man. It's all falling apart. And he's like, I can't take watching this clown show every day. And talking about the shenanigans at the car wash when he is really, really concerned about the state of the world. Like, he thinks they got bigger fish to fry, and he's just trying to find himself as a young man in LA. So Lonnie holds him and he's like, we gonna figure it out. We gonna figure it out. Lonnie has that man's back. And I was like, y'all, I'm shocked that there was like a meaningful emotional moment in this movie. And we'll talk about it later, but I actually really enjoyed that element of the story. So, to my surprise, they both leave the car wash safely. Thank goodness. Marlene is back out on the street again, and we really don't get a satisfying ending to her story. The credits roll, and one of the cool things about the credits is they do something that I've never actually seen done before, where a radio DJ, because they've been narrating the story basically the whole time, introduces each actor as if they're announcing a musician in a band, and they're like, on saxophone, Bill Duke, or in a moment that literally made me laugh out loud, he said, on burrito, we have the actor who played Tuco. And that was just really funny to me. It was like the perfect closing note for a film that used the radio as like the heartbeat of the film. So I really enjoyed that and thought it was very unique, and I'd never seen anything like that before. So let's talk a little bit about my thoughts on the ending of this movie. Now, one of the storylines that I hadn't really wrapped up yet because I wanted to talk about it here was TC and Mona. So TC again was stalking Mona, okay? And I want to be really direct here, okay? Y'all, this movie has homophobia, fat phobia, xenophobia, some racist language, quite a bit of sexual harassment, and all of those things bother me and don't hold up today, really. But one of the things that actually infuriated me the most about this movie was TC and Mona's storyline, okay? Now, I told y'all earlier about how he was stalking her and wasn't taking no for an answer, right? But now that he has won the concert tickets, he has a new bargaining chip and a renewed sense of audacity, okay? So he goes into her workplace as they're closing down for the day and he puts his foot down and he's like, hey girl, there's no magic prince that's coming. I'm the only one who digs you as much as I do. And, you should be with me and you should start treating me better before I move on and find someone else to go to the dance party with and blah, 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 and all of that stuff. Now, if I were her, I would have said something like, don't threaten me with a good time because I'm sick of you. Like, she's been trying to get rid of this man the whole movie. So, yeah, don't threaten me with a good time. How about you leave? Or, don't let the doorknob hit you where the good Lord split you. That's what she should have said. However, in this movie, I'm so disappointed. Mona is, I don't know what the actress's name off the top of my head, but she's so beautiful. Just a very beautiful, very pretty lady who is not starved for attention. And while TC's afro is amazing, that man is stalking her and she already went on a date with him. She already tried it and tested the waters and she ain't like it. Okay. So interestingly enough, after his little tirade about how she needs to treat him better, she decides to go on a second date with him and go out with him to this dance party. And I'm like, girl, I literally was like, bitch, what are you doing? I was furious. I was so furious at the way that storyline closed out because this movie falls into the trap that so many other, pieces of media fall into about, this person who's being overly persistent, who is doing or on the verge of doing a crime of stalking and harassment. And, they treat this like a romantic triumph. And, oh, this guy wore her down after relentlessly visiting her workplace and not leaving her alone and, threatening to go away forever if she didn't, treat him better or whatever. And they treat this like a happy ending. And I am not into it. Like, it's the same thing that happened with The Sandlot where that boy tricked the older lifeguard into kissing him, or Steve Urkel and Laura, or Nikki Parker and Professor Ogilvy. I don't like that. I think it's awful. Wearing somebody down is not the same thing as winning somebody over. And I think that this movie really glorifies the wearing someone down thing. And it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous to have people believe that they just have to keep being persistent with someone who's telling them no, who clearly wants nothing to do with them. It's very dangerous. And it frames harassment as charming. And it's not only dangerous for people who are victims of the harassment, it's dangerous to have people believe that they just need to be persistent in order to get the things that they want. I hate it. I hate it. It doesn't stand the test of time, y'all. I hate that. So the other thing that I kind of want to dig into that I talked about before was like when Leon and Lonnie had that handshake moment where he was like, we're going to talk about your ideas tomorrow. It gave me like a feeling in the pit of my stomach because something in me was like, he finally got the opportunity and something was going to be there to take it away. And so it made me think about how I feel about modern media, right? So if we think about common movies, thrillers, whatever, I feel like modern media has trained me at least, and maybe I can say trained us to expect the worst. And I have a bunch of feelings about that, especially for a movie that's so old, because emotionally, during the moment when Abdullah was robbing the car wash, I really was catastrophizing. And I was thinking about, if you are watching this movie in 1976 when it came out, do you have the same feeling of dread that I had ever since Abdullah had actually been fired? And it got me to thinking about how, like, when we saw him skulking outside the office and my heart rate went up and I was like, Lonnie's gonna die, he's gonna get shot, or Lonnie is gonna get caught holding that gun and go back to jail, or when they're hugging and loving on each other, one of them's gonna get shot on accident. I literally had no faith that that was going to turn out well. Like, that's shocking to me, right? I was definitely catastrophizing. And so it reminded me of like the movie Life, right? Like where Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy's characters finally prove their innocence, and then the warden who's going to release them dies in his sleep the same night. And it's just one of those things where it's like characters can't be happy anymore. Like if someone is full of hope, if someone has a future, they're not going to be able to attain it. If they survive, they're not going to be able to achieve their goals. And that's really, like, I hate that I'm thinking that way. And I'm like, if you're watching this movie in 1976, do you have that same dread and those feelings like this character is not going to get the things they want, even though they really deserve it? And it just made me think about how used to that dynamic I am. And maybe I need to like question that a bit more. But yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised that it didn't happen that way and that things turned out way better than I was expecting them to turn out. So them walking out safely was a relief. And, he lives to fight another day, and maybe his ideals will be implemented. And, we'll never know. But at least we know he didn't die that night. Thank God. Okay. But yeah, I really did get myself worked up about something that resolved quite beautifully. So I'm gonna check that. I'm gonna check that inclination to feel like things are gonna turn out poorly. There was a movie called Royal Hotel that me and my husband watched that I really enjoyed. That also made me question the catastrophizing part of my brain. Y'all should check that out. It's a modern movie that's actually very good and does not end up where you think it's going to end up. So check that out if you want to. Okay, and let's talk about Abdullah before we get ready to close out. So I think that it would be easy to watch Abdullah in this movie and just think of him as like a difficult person and a troublemaker and, the person who almost ruined everything, almost killed Lonnie, all that stuff. But I think that he's more complicated than that. And I like that we have such a complex character in a, silly workplace comedy. He's a young man who's lost. He changed his faith. He changed his name. He has strong political convictions that he hasn't fully thought through or doesn't necessarily know how to act on. He has anger about things that are very real, like the state of Black life and the economics of working a job like this for a boss like Leon, and the feeling that the world is moving in the wrong direction and wanting to make a difference. And so underneath all of that anger, we see that there is this brilliant freaking saxophone player, again with the saxophone. I don't know what that was about, but he's playing something that sounds like grief. And he's like going to rob a man who has only been trying to help him during his time at the car wash and who's been looking out for him all day. And Lonnie talking him down by not overpowering him, but by showing him some love and genuine concern and guidance and protection. And, saying, I see you, I know who you are, I was you. And getting to pass down the knowledge that kept Abdullah from making a tragic mistake. It's so beautiful, y'all, because it's really moving to me because, again, this is an ensemble comedy. And the movie raises the stakes literally at the last minute, like literally at closing time. And I was not prepared for how meaningful this part of the story would be. And it was just really beautiful to see this older Black man literally holding big old Bill Duke and telling him everything is going to be okay, and like this loving kind of semi-fatherhood or mentorship and the trust and camaraderie that they had is something that we don't see very often, especially between two Black men where machismo is everything, and to see him just melt and cry is actually very beautiful and something that I think we should see more often in film. So I actually really enjoyed that part. Now let's move on, y'all. At the end of every review, we answer the same two questions. Does it hold up today, and is it worth revisiting? So let's start with if it holds up. I'm going to be honest with you all. I'm going to say mostly no. I do think that there are some redeeming and lasting elements of this film that I want to hold space for. So we're going to talk about what holds up versus, what doesn't. So what doesn't hold up is homophobia. Some of the depictions around Lindy, particularly around like the sexual harassment elephants, particularly around the sexual harassment element, reinforcing harmful stereotypes about gay men that I really didn't appreciate. But again, like I said, Lindy is a character that's more built out than a lot of gay characters in modern media. And they're very confident and sassy and have fantastic comebacks. Like there was this moment when Abdullah called Lindy a sorry looking F word, and I was appalled. And then Lindy replies with, "Who you calling sorry looking?" Y'all, in moments, Lindy ate, y'all. Lindy. And then when, Abdullah comes back with some, he was like, oh, Lindy has fallen prey to the emasculation of the black man or something along those lines. Lindy is like, I'm more man than you'll ever be and more woman than you'll ever have. And just walks off. And I'm like, Lindy ate. Everything about Lindy ain't right and doesn't feel comfortable. And the way that they treat Lindy, of course, also isn't right. And is a function of the times. But y'all, Lindy ate a little bit. But yeah, there were some elements of Lindy that I didn't appreciate. There are also other sexual harassment things that happen at the workplace. We have an employee invading the bathroom privacy of the female cash register. We have Hippo, who is groping Marlene aggressively, oh my gosh, and engaging in prostitution on the clock. There is fat phobia. The man's name is Hippo. He don't have no other name. What is going on? Okay, there's a xenophobia that's directed to the Native American guy on the staff. There's racist language scattered throughout. The TC and Mona storyline pisses me off about framing stalking and sexual harassment as romance. I really am not here for it. And because this is a very male-dominated story, neither of the women that we follow, Marcia nor Marlene, really get a satisfying ending. And the contrast between those two is very interesting, where we have a black lady of the night who is judged for her job, where we have this white cash register lady who is sleeping with multiple men and is not judged for it. So that's not my favorite. But yeah, the women kind of serve as elements of other people's story, of like the men's stories. So to me, that kind of doesn't hold up either. But the things that do hold up are significant. Okay, so there's the story itself. We have the ensemble structure, the day in the life format, and the way these characters interact with and bounce off each other. That holds up really well conceptually. The Lonnie and Abdullah thread is very moving and feels relevant to have, this black man mentor this young black man and stop him from making a tragic mistake. The tenderness in that scene, I feel like we need to see more of it even today. The radio as a narrative device is very creative and interesting, and I haven't seen anything like that before, so I really enjoyed that too. And the closest thing that I can think of is like the radio and Waiting to Exhale had like a similar feel, but not as woven throughout the story. We also have the Daddy Rich sequence, who apparently it was based on an actual preacher. There was like a preacher named Ike that they actually invited to come play a version of himself, but he decided not to because it would have been making fun of himself about his prosperity gospel. So that was interesting, but it was like a sharp and funny piece of satire that we still see today. There are still preachers that fall into that category, and it's very relevant. And the credits are unlike anything I've ever seen. We also have the soundtrack, which apparently was made before the movie was made, which is typically the reverse of how it actually happens, and how it ties everything together. It kicked off the career of Rose Royce, who made multiple hits, even just on this soundtrack that went on to make more hits moving forward. I mean, it still holds up. A lot of those songs we still know and sing today. So, Car Wash, of course, I'm Going Down, I Want to Get Next to You. These still have a life that they're living. And some of these songs, I Want to Get Next to You in particular, I remember it from Friday. We can see that, this movie in a lot of different ways has influenced more modern media. And I like that as well. And Norman Whitfield won a Grammy for the score of this movie, and it was well deserved. And then I think there's, the historical value of this movie. It's a predominantly black ensemble film from 1976 with, diversity in the cast. It's made by a major Hollywood studio, and stories about these types of people weren't made very often in the 70s. We also get to see Richard Pryor in his prime. We get to see the Pointer Sisters and Bill Duke as a young man before he went on to be that guy in Predator. He did a lot of work behind the scenes and future things as well. He directed films and TV shows and all of that stuff. So we get to see these people closer to their inceptions, right? And so I think there's something really special about seeing people and where they were in their careers at that time. So, does this movie hold up? Not really. I'm going to say mostly no, but some of the conceptual aspects, the long-standing influence, the unique way that they handle certain things, and the tenderness of that scene between Lonnie and Abdullah really hold up for me. So certain specific story elements do hold up, and I think it kind of depends on who's watching to say if it holds up or not for you. Now, the other question we answer is it worth revisiting? So, my honest answer to that is it kind of depends on you and how you relate to media that's a product of its time. This movie is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, and the things that don't hold up in this movie, the homophobia, xenophobia, racist language, harassment that's, played up for laughs, none of those things were really that taboo in 1976. Having a gay character like Lindy was taboo. I heard that when they adapted the movie for television, they removed a lot of Lindy's parts and they added back in the edited scenes. The scenes that had been cut of Joe, the guy that was played by Danny DeVito. And so when people saw the movie in theaters and saw it on TV, they literally saw like two different movies, which is like so very interesting. So Lindy was kind of taboo, a very taboo element of the story. A lot of those things flew back then and they don't fly now. And I think that if you're the type of person who can't separate those elements from the time in which they were made, I mean, if watching those things in a comedic context is going to be too uncomfortable for you to parse out the redeemable or non-problematic parts of the story, then you should not revisit this movie or watch it for the first time. But if you are someone who can hold space for the good and the bad in this film, and if you can see it as like a time capsule that reflects, what was appropriate in 1976 and can acknowledge that it has problems while still kind of staying engaged in the story, then I think you might actually enjoy the story and appreciate its influence despite all of the bad stuff. Okay, so I think that there are things in here that you will laugh at. I think there are things that will genuinely move you, and see that you'll make connections to other movies like Friday or other Black ensemble films, or to how, connections to how people used to listen to the radio all day and that was their way of connecting to the world and appreciating that, or about how movies were made, or Black storytelling, or having Black stories be at the forefront in the 1970s. Like, there are things to appreciate about this film. So I think there are things that will make you cringe, that will offend you, that will make you gasp in disgust and also in delight. So the film feels quite irreverent, but if you can hold space for both of those things, I think you would appreciate rewatching it and be able to see like, nah, that won't fly. But this part is kind of funny, is kind of revolutionary for the time. So I went in knowing that there were going to be things that didn't hold up, and I braced myself for them. And because of that, I was able to receive the good parts while, condemning the bad ones. So overall, I did enjoy watching this movie, and I'm glad to say that I understand more about modern media and the impact that this film has had over the past 50 years. So I was appalled by the bad stuff and pleasantly surprised by the good stuff. Will I watch it again? Probably not. So it's one of those things, just like I say that I did it, that I watched it, that I know this film and understand a lot of the influence. So yeah, there's that. All right, y'all. So before I let you go, let's talk Rotten Tomatoes ratings. So the scores for this one is very interesting. Critics gave Car Wash an 86, while the audience gave it a 59. And that's like a significant gap, like a 26 point difference or something like that, 27. I think that tells you about how this film lands depending on who's watching it and what they're looking for. Like, one of the critics talked about how the movie goes by so fast that you don't know you're eating, and then it supplies the illusion of energy. And I'm like, it's an interesting observation because the movie is moving. You have so many people to get to know and so many different storylines and threads that for some people it can feel fast and feeling like you don't get to really engage on a deeper level. I didn't necessarily feel that way, but I understand what they're talking about. And then on the other side, there's like a more positive review that describes it as having gritty humor and, is polishing the souls of likable street people. And I think that that gets at something true too. Like there's the grittiness and authenticity that makes this feel like a real car wash that with real people. And, like I'm saying, like feels like a precursor to things like Parks and Rec or The Office. And I think that if you can meet the film where it is, and if that's the viewpoint that you're looking at it from, I understand that critique as well. So depending on who you ask, Car Wash is either a fast-moving, shallow comedy or a culturally significant, genuinely funny day in the life film. And I think both of those things are valid. So for me, I would land closer to the audience score, which is about a 59. Not because I didn't enjoy it, because I do think there are enjoyable elements, but I think there are enough things that don't hold up to modern standards to keep me from rating it higher. Like some of the jokes don't land anymore. Yeah. I can acknowledge that the film is important and still be honest about it not holding up. So I also want to be clear that like a 59 for me is not a dismissal. I think it laid the groundwork for a lot of things in media and music, and you can still feel like this palpable influence on modern media. And again, Lonnie and Abdullah, like I was very moved by that. And I think that's a piece of Black film history that I'm glad exists, and I would like to see a little more, at least that storyline. So, all right, y'all, that is a wrap on my 50th anniversary review of Car Wash here on Sup Media Reviews. So I want to hear from you all. Does this movie hold up for you? Have you revisited it recently, or are you watching it for the first time? Do you agree with the Rotten Tomatoes scores or my scores? Let me know your thoughts on our social media pages. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, right here on YouTube, Pinterest, and TikTok. And speaking of YouTube, up next we are continuing our April Fool's series. Me and a special guest will be reviewing Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. This one's going to be a really good time, and I've never seen it before, so this will be my first time watching. And as we make our way toward the end of the season, because remember, April is the final month of season 2, we still have a review of Girl 6 coming up. And in our season 2 finale, we will be watching Slither for its 20th anniversary. So there's a lot to look forward to before we close out this chapter. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you know the moment a new episode drops. It genuinely means a lot to me to have you all here and to have reached the 100 subscribers milestone. So I appreciate you all listening, watching, and being a part of the Sup Media Reviews community. I really don't take it for granted, and I'm really happy about the progress we're making. All right, y'all, that is it from me. Y'all have a fantastic day, and peace out. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Sup Media Reviews. New episodes drop just about every week, and our brand new YouTube series is coming your way. So make sure you follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook so you never miss a thing. Got a movie, album, or show you think we should review? Send it our way. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and just chill till the next episode.